Sutta on opening the sutra.
Good afternoon. It's so good to see you all, and terrifying and so strange just about to say so many words in session. The teachers have asked me to speak today, to give a talk about my experience in the realm of the 5 hindrances. And I'm happy to try. I appreciate your patience and your support and your noble friendship very much. So here we are at our mid-ongo session about the hindrances. And aren't we lucky? Because we're at session, and so we can really be sitting with ourselves, and we can really perhaps be feeling these hindrances arising and falling away and arising again, blending with others, arising as a cohort. At least that's been my experience a little bit this session. I really also, before I talk about the hindrances more, I want to really appreciate how deep this practice is already on Friday. The Zendo is so silent, and I feel like we're all really practicing together in solitude. And I think that's just a wonderful opportunity for all of us, and I'm really grateful to be here with you guys. So I think before I start talking about my own personal experience with the hindrances, I'm just going to kind of go over them. We did the teaching retreat a few weeks ago, but I know not everybody was there, and I think it's just a good idea to just kind of refresh our basics on what we're talking about. So the Buddha defined 5 hindrances to coming to full awakening. One of them is sense desire. So this one is pretty straightforward. This is the clinging to things that have to do with the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, our thoughts, our ideas, our concepts, and then the easier things like new clothes we want and cars we'd like and houses and things like this. But the stickier parts are about the thoughts and ideas, right? So when we're struggling with this hindrance, it feels a lot like never being satisfied, of seeking and clinging. It feels like tension in the body. It feels like a loneliness, kind of a seeking, searching, deeply unsatisfied feeling that isn't going to be fixed by getting what we want anyways. But that's how it feels. And the thing with all these hindrances, right, is that they've served us pretty well to a certain point. They're actually really good coping mechanisms for samsara. They're helpful until they aren't, until they become a hindrance. And there's also a healthy version of them. So we have to have desire, we have to want to eat, we have to want to live, we have to want to practice. So that's not what this is talking about. It's talking about that unwholesome factor, the clinging part. And its complement is aversion and ill will. And so this is the anger, the despair, the grudge, the jealousy, the irritation, the annoyance, the frustration, all that family of feelings. And this feels more constricting in your body. You feel this as a tightness. It's painful, it's isolating. You hear yourself blaming things outside, that it's this fault or that fault, and I'm a victim of this or that. And we like to feed it by talking about it a lot, like getting really in there and like getting somebody to agree with us and kind of egg it on, right? So that's sort of how it operates. In a healthy way, it helps us recognize injustice and inequality and do something about it and get information about situations that aren't good for us, to hold boundaries. So it's not the anger that's the problem, right? Again, it's the indulging and it's the festering and the savoring that's the problem. So those are the first two, desire and ill will. And then we have sloth and torpor. And this is not being tired. This is not physiological, I didn't get enough sleep and I'm tired. This has an element of laziness in it, right? This is that dull, I don't want to do anything, I don't want to do this thing, but if something better came along, I might be able to summon the energy to do that thing. So that's kind of how you can tell the difference. I think this one takes a lot of honesty to really work with, to be really honest about when we're tired and need to rest and having no guilt around that. And then also being able to recognize when it's not exactly that. It's maybe an avoidance. When this comes up with another hindrance especially, like you're having some restlessness or anxiety, and all of a sudden you don't want to sit anymore, you're really tired, maybe you're going to fall asleep instead of work with what's coming up, that's sloth and torpor. So sloth is the physical absence of vitality, like you feel that in your body, and then torpor is the lack of the mental energy. So torpor usually follows sloth. And this has helped us in our lives. Sometimes we do need to shut down a little bit and get away from things and take a break. That can be useful. It's about not indulging in it. And the great thing about sloth and torpor is there's actually things we can do really easy to prevent it, We can watch what we eat, getting enough sleep, taking good care of ourselves. All that stuff helps prevent sloth and torpor from taking over. All right. And then sort of the opposite of sloth and torpor is restlessness, which has to do with anxiety and remorse, worry about the future, feeling really bad about things from the past, and just kind of letting those sort of cyclically go through your mind and just indulging in them. And, sometimes really savoring that too, thinking about when you were the hero and the victim, as Rinzai says. And he describes it as that shark energy. If you were at the teaching retreat, he talked a lot about that circling shark. You feed it a little bit and it just wants more and more and more. So it's never satisfied. I think in the body, this feels like that energy coursing through your body where you can't actually entirely sit still. Sometimes, like for me, I think it might look, it might look sitting very still on the outside, but what are you feeling inside? If you've ever felt that like energy inside that isn't settling, that's the hindrance of restlessness arising. And then the last one is pretty problematic. This is skeptical doubt. So this is when we're at sesshin and we're thinking, I can't do this. Does this even work? why are we here? This is stupid. And it's like you're holding back in your practice, okay? So that's how you can feel that kind of, that hesitation in yourself. You have a lot of discursive thinking about if this is going to even ever help you. So essentially you're sitting in zazen and you're dropping an obstacle right in there if this doesn't work. So it's very self-sabotaging, and it can really take up, you could sit a whole period of zazen and just go through these doubts. So this is one of the hindrances that we really need to learn to just set aside, even if it can only be temporary, even if it's only going to be for, the next minute or the next 5 minutes or this one period of zazen. Like Doan Roshi says, just give it a little kiss and set it on your knee and let it sit there. And you can always pick it up later. But I think that's a really important one, and I'm gonna talk more about my experience with that in a few minutes. That is a protective force, though, in samsara. If you think about it, we are always looking out for what could be the problem. We don't want to get eaten by the bear. So there's that scanning, and is this safe? Is this good for me? But again, it's only helpful until it's not. So that's sort of the basics on the hindrances. And so how do they show up? Sometimes they show up very subtly. Restlessness can be as subtle as noticing that you're not really breathing that much in zazen. That's a very subtle form of restlessness. And it can be quite obvious. The time it can be fidgeting, outright restlessness in your body. The monitor, it says sit still, and you know who they're talking to, right? It's me, I'm the problem. Okay, so in thinking about my own experience, just in the past 2 days, this is probably one of my more restless sessions in the past 6 to 9 months, to be honest. I think you all know that Hazel, my daughter, has had surgery. She's doing really well. She's recovering nicely. Yes, thank you for all your intentions. She is delighted that her room comes with a little robot. It is a bear-shaped doctor robot, like this tall, and he will go get you a coffee or a juice. Or if you need to be walked to the restroom or the cafeteria, Kokai can put in where he wants to go in the hospital, and the little robot will lead him there. So that's pretty fun for her, all other things aside. But she's doing really great, and I'm so grateful, and I appreciate how much the Sangha has held my whole family through this. And all is well. And still, I sit on the cushion, and my heart is palpitating, and I can feel this restlessness inside, this anxiety. And what do you do with that? And I think about what I would have done with that when I first started coming to session. Well, I probably wouldn't have come, because I would have been a disaster. I don't know what I would have done, but it wouldn't probably be sitting on the cushion. And if it was, I would be constant churn. It would have been just constant, oh my God, I'm not there. What if this happens? What if she needs someone to advocate for her? What if this? What if that? It just would have been so all-consuming. And so that's like a hindrance, right? I cannot practice when my mind is doing that. I can practice with the hindrance. I can see it, acknowledge it, and face it. But if I can't even do that, then I'm just sitting there churning. So, we talked at the teaching retreat a lot about sort of the universal antidotes to this, and one of those is mindfulness, to really be able to see what's going on in our mind, and not to just shove it down, but to actually lean into it. So, I'm able to sit and able to work with that, but it is, you notice it, and I noticed how it didn't just affect, it does bring up that sloth, right? It's like, oh, I feel really tired at this session, and that's very unusual for me. And I know that some of it is just because of this anxiety that I don't really want to be with it. It's, there's still a little bit of I don't want to do that exactly. But being able to see it and being able to name it and I guess confess it to all of you that feels a lot better. I feel like I've had to be really honest with myself about it. Yesterday it felt like sloth because I knew I was avoiding that anxiety about her surgery. And today I know I'm tired because I haven't been sleeping much. So I'm going to go to bed early tonight. And I think when we're sitting in the Zendo, and we're all having our practice and we're all sitting together, and there's this so much that isn't speakable that happens in here. And I think that's such a practice of noble friendship, and it's such a practice of our silence and our commitment to the session and to each other and the retreat and ourselves. We talk about the suitable conversation being one of the antidotes to all these hindrances, and it is. But this is actually a suitable conversation also. Like, this is us having suitable conversation together in silence. And I think it's so powerful, we're so lucky. So that's how things are going right now. I did some reflecting to prepare for this talk about my experience with the other five, or with the 5 hindrances, one at a time. So I think I'm going to talk about them, not in the order I presented them, but in the order of how challenging they've been to me, because I feel like talking about something a little easier right now. So the first, desire. For me, this has taken the form of kind of worrying a lot about my kids and their long-term future and their success, their happiness, as well as my own longevity and my own fear of rejection, but of the lung kind. And that has been with me since I started my practice. That's really what brought me to practice, was, oh my gosh, these kids, and oh my God, my life. And it wasn't, I don't feel like I had as much struggle with the sense desires, like the eye, ear, the basics, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. Because I don't know really why, but that's just not my karmic habit energy. We'll get to that. So for me, with the restless, or the desire, when I think about those thoughts and the visions and the kind of clinging that I would have to these notions of what it would mean for my kids to be happy and how I could make that happen for them, I think it's really about like just putting the time in on the cushion, like just sitting there with it and letting it arise and acknowledging it and letting it go. Just over and over, for me, over and over and over again with that. Just like, oh, there that is again. And seeing it and letting it go. And then, like, not even picking it up. Like seeing it and not even having to acknowledge and let it go, because just not picking it up. Just seeing it, let it arise and not grow. For me, that kind of desire is associated with a lot of restlessness. It brings the restlessness in. It kind of makes me want to talk, actually. So yeah, because I think there's a lot of kind of habit training around, we have a problem, we go talk about it. So for a long time, I struggled with too much talking at session. I think a lot of people have told me to shut up at session. I know Rinson and Doan both have, and Reverend Secho has, and Reverend Zuise, and Eka, and Reverend Kaishin, Reverend Kaishin, Reverend Kaishin. Probably anybody else. But because, and I can see now that that was coming from that restlessness and that habit energy around talking about the restlessness. So I'm really grateful that that I've done so much session practice, because after so many people tell you to shut up, you kind of stop wanting to be in trouble about it anymore, get a little better about it. But you know what happened then was early, I don't know when it was, maybe 9 months ago or so. Rinson was talking about the silence and how important it is, and about being an obstacle. And this just made such an impression on me, because, I mean, I guess I knew that, right? We know that, that's why we'd be silent. But it was when he was talking about not just being an obstacle to yourself, but to other people. And that was so horrifying to me. Like, my petty little need to get up and chat about my problem could be an obstacle to somebody's awakening? That's not okay. Like, that's not okay. And I don't mean I was talking all the time. I mean, you all know me, but still, like, the difference between not engaging in extra conversation at session and indulging a little bit is huge. And when we all are doing it, it makes such a huge, powerful difference. I know we all can feel it. And it really does take all of us doing it consistently. So, suitable non-conversation. All right. Desire, aversion. Okay. I don't have a lot of anger. In my life, I'm not a very angry person. I never have been. But you know what used to make me really angry was oryoki. We'd be sitting on the floor with all these rules about where to put the bowls, where to put the spoon. I'm having all this anxiety about my immune system and food poisoning and longevity, and it's like ridiculous up here. And then we're like focusing on all these little rules. I don't like Brussels sprouts. I don't like mushrooms. I don't like beets. I don't like cumin. I don't like tempeh. I don't like chickpeas. I don't like beans. I don't like tomatoes. And I think our Tenzo is an amazing cook. And the food is very good. But it brought up a lot of anger in me. And I would get very restless, outwardly so, fidgeting, maybe some sloth in there, like I'm clearly able to sit zazen for 2 hours, but I can't sit for 10 minutes while we eat oryoki. I mean, it was really bad, y'all. One day, you know how the teachers will give a talk and you'll be like, oh, they're talking to me. And then you're like, oh, and they can't really be talking directly to me. And I think Rinson was up here talking, he was talking about people being restless during oryoki. And I was like, oh my God, I think he's talking about me. And he was. Like, I asked him, he's like, yeah, I'm talking about you. Sit still. So, but I don't know where that anger is coming from. Like, what is the source of this anger? What is making me mad about this? And then I remember I had Dokusan with Doan Roshi, and she was like, why does it matter? Just let it be. Like, let that happen. Let it run through you. That really helped, actually. And I don't feel so angry about oryoki anymore. I kind of enjoy it, but not the Brussels sprouts. And I've had that happen at session before too, that unknown anger arising. Does anybody have that happen ever? Like you're just sitting there minding your own business. All of a sudden you're just like really angry. Yes, thank you. And that can be a hindrance because you can quickly turn into like, oh, I'm having aversion about my aversion. I don't like this. This isn't good. This isn't right. This isn't how Zazen should be. What's wrong with me? Now you're in doubt. Can I even do this? What am I doing here? It's just like spiraling all these hindrances together. And we can just like, let that go. Like just be the anger, let it be. It's not going to last forever. It's going to pass. I wish I had something better to say about that, but I really don't. I don't know why that happens. All right, so that is desire, ill will, and their friends. And then sloth and torpor. So like I said, I don't tend to get too tired at session. I have a lot of energy. I'm a person with a lot of energy, very lucky that way right now. But there's subtle forms of this, right? There's subtle forms of not feeling that energy raised. Sitting, not falling asleep yet, but not engaged, not alert either. If you've ever been monitor, you see all stages of this in the Zendo. From, outright sleeping to not upright, not raising the shen, not feeling that, right? So I think the thing that's helped me the most with that has been kind of going back to like sort of my own direct experience and, kind of revisiting that and re-engaging it. I think that in the sutra they call it investigation of the Dharma, like kind of review your Dharma, and that will very naturally pull energy up and focus you. Feeling the whole Zendo, feel all your noble friends in the space, feel the power of the whole practice together. We talk about the Jiriki and the Tariki, the inner power and the outer powers, and just let them all kind of merge together. And that has always sort of helped me personally kind of rise above the sloth and torpor. Oh, and here's another thing that I have found helps a lot, is if you actually follow the whole session schedule, like where it says to rest, like that's in there for a reason. And I resisted that the first maybe 6 months of session because I would rather go exercise or do something, like go for a walk. And I felt that was restful. And maybe sometimes it is, but really what I needed to do was learn how to lay down and take a nap. And I remember Reverend Suisse helping me with that very much, about the whole schedule is the schedule. And it has a bedtime on it for a reason, because we need enough sleep. And there's barely enough sleep in there, so it actually is follow the whole schedule. And I think my barrier there was realizing that taking rest is not being lazy, right? Like I grew up in a strong work ethic family, extended family, married a person with Amish roots. Like, there's this notion that resting is lazy, and it's entirely not. It's entirely a practice. Okay, and then I already talked about my chatty problem with restlessness and working with that. And so I saved my hardest hindrance for last, which is the doubt. Because I really struggled with this when I first came to the practice. And just let me start here and see if it sounds kind of weird. Where am I going? But I really wanted to raise my kids in a Waldorf school, and I had a lot of clinging around it. Like, I persisted in this Waldorf environment long after it was good for my kids because this was about me. And I liked the pretty colors, and I liked all the philosophy around it. And in the end, they kicked my kid out, and the rest of us had to go too. And I know that doesn't sound it wasn't really that major of an event in terms of things that can happen to a person. It was far too expensive for us, for one thing. It was not sustainable. But there was this like loss of community, and I had really put my faith in it. A lot of my midwife friends were there. We had a lot of what felt like really strong community, and I really trusted it at the time. And I trusted the Waldorf administration and the philosophy and all the things. And when we first came here, and I felt so much resonance and love, and I wanted to be here entirely, there was also this, and this is at the same time, mind you, that I desperately want to be doing this. At the same time, my stupid brain is like I think it's like the ego screaming, like, don't do this. Like, this might not be safe. You can't do this. This is for people who are healthy. This is for people who are younger. This is for people who are better at it. This is really what's going on in my brain, right? And it would come up in my attempts at Zazen, my early attempts at Zazen, just constantly, like, why are you even trying to do this? What do you think you're going to get out of this? How is this going to help anything? And then, then that becomes more subtle, like your life starts to improve, and so you trust it a little more. And then for me, it got into, should I really trust these teachers? Like, how do I trust these people that I don't really know like this? And just, how do we do that? How do we trust? How do we trust ourselves? And how do we trust our own experience? How do we trust the teachers? How do we follow the instructions? And I played with it for a while, and then it's like, well, you're either doing it or you're not. And you can't really be doing it if you're just going to hang on to these doubts and this uncertainty. It's like I was saying earlier, it's like you're dumping a huge obstacle onto yourself and squishing yourself with it. Of course it's not going to work if all you're doing is wondering if it's going to work. I have this problem with going to the gym too. Like, does it really matter if I lift weights for 20 minutes? Yeah, Like, is it really going to make a difference? It is. You see evidence. You see people who got stronger. You see people who got to be better people. I think that was one of the things that actually helped me the most at first, was like looking at my future noble friends and being like, these are smart, intelligent people who are really good people. This seems to be working for them, right? Like trusting other people first when I couldn't quite trust myself yet. That was a big part of that process for me. And then just being able to set that down, set it aside, set the doubts aside, and really open your heart, like to really, truly just open your heart to the practice, and to the Sangha, and to the teachers, and the lineage. Because it's not just these two people, it's an entire lineage. There's so much to trust there. And then ultimately opening my heart to myself and to trusting myself that way. I mean, it's been transformative, and I think it has been for all of us. So there was this transition time, I think, in my working on this doubt, where you say you're just going to set this aside, you're going to let it go, you're not going to entertain it anymore. And it just kind of creeps in, right? And you try not to pick it up, you try not to play with it, and you do this over and over again. And then you start to see the doubt arising a little bit. I just had this experience about 2 hours ago. You feel it arise, and it doesn't come all the way up. You just notice it, that's all, and it doesn't grow at all. And to me, it's kind of like when you're sitting in zazen and you right before like a deeper samadhi state, but where you feel thoughts kind of start to arise. They don't arise. You just sense them there. So like, I feel like, for me, I think there's a lot of karmic habit energy around the doubt itself, like not about anything in particular, but just this karmic habit energy of doubt. Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the best thing? Am I being helpful? And so just seeing that karmic energy start to arise, karmic habit energy arise, and then not actually. I mean, that's amazing. So I think I just want to talk a little bit about the universal antidotes to the hindrances. Because when I looked at this list, and these are all things that the Buddha said to do about your hindrances. So I think I'm gonna trust that. And the first is the mindfulness, right? And I've been thinking about mindfulness and how I think there's so much, it's really just honesty, isn't it? It's being so honest, so brutally honest, and trusting yourself to not judge it, to trust yourself to be able to notice it without piling any judgment on. And I think, like, for me, that's been a really big deal. It was really hard for me to do that when I started practicing. Part of that is because of the state I was in, and because I had to do a lot of protecting to keep myself alive and able to function in that samsaric world. And part of it was just that I didn't really know how to do it. I didn't know how to be honest without being judgmental of myself. But really, that's all that mindfulness is, I think. And maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. But that's how I feel it. And then the other thing is to notice what's feeding the hindrance and stop feeding it. Like, you got to take away the food, which most of the time is just all the time, it's just ourselves, right? It's just that we are ruminating and indulging and giving consent for that hindrance to be residing. And I think it's really important that when we do feel that freedom, that we're not being hindered, that we really can enjoy it. And not that we can't enjoy the other times too, but to really notice how it feels to have that moment of freedom or that time of freedom, how it feels to sit so authentically as ourselves, and whether that's with hindrance or without hindrance, but being able to really enjoy the ease of the mindfulness and the ease of that honesty, the ease of the open heart. And then last is, so the universal antidotes are, the first one is to turn into the hindrance with mindfulness. The second is to notice what feeds it and remove the nutrients. The third is to acknowledge the freedom when that hindrance is not present and to really appreciate it. And then the last is my favorite, the noble friendship and suitable conversation. Especially in the context of Sangha and Sesshin, and also in the context of our everyday lives. being able to be that noble friend for somebody else, being able to receive that noble friend, and being able to really dwell there is, the Buddha said spiritual friendship is the whole. So when we're at sesshin, we practice together and we practice in solitude in our community. We're holding each other, and we're holding the silence as a way of holding each other. And this is sesshin. So for the sake of all beings, may the merit of our time at this sesshin together and our practice today go to all beings where it is most needed, and may all beings come to full and complete awakening without exception. May it be so.
Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless. I vow to